In 1971, President Nixon made a single decision that changed the financial world forever. He severed the dollar's last tie to gold, unleashing the full power of central banks to create money from thin air. What followed was the worst inflation America had seen in decades, a crisis that made the cost of living a daily struggle for millions of families. The question everyone is asking now is whether we are heading into another era like the 1970s, or if this time the consequences will be even worse. The patterns are eerily similar. The money printing has been more extreme, and the institutions responsible are the same ones claiming they can fix it. In the next few minutes, we are going to trace the real history of inflation, from the gold standard to quantitative easing, and show you how every major price spike and economic crisis can be traced back to one source. This is not just theory. This is the hidden story behind your wallet, and understanding it is the first step to protecting yourself. Now, let me ask you something. Ever feel like your money just does not go as far as it used to? That gallon of milk, that tank of gas, the rent, it all keeps climbing. We call it inflation, but what if I told you it is not some random force of nature? What if every major price spike, every economic crisis you have ever seen, can be traced back to one source: central banks? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the true history of inflation and exposing how these powerful institutions have shaped our financial world, often leading to the very chaos they claim to prevent. This is not just an economics lesson. It is the hidden story behind your wallet, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Let us start at the beginning, in an era that feels almost mythical now: the gold standard. For a long time, money was real. It was backed by physical gold. A dollar was not just a piece of paper. It was a claim on a specific amount of gold held in a vault somewhere. This put a natural limit on how much money could be created. You could not just print more dollars without having more gold to back them up. This was not some abstract economic theory. It was a physical constraint, and it mattered. This system provided a powerful anchor for value. When your currency is tied to something real, something you cannot create at will, prices tend to stay stable. And they did. For decades, even centuries, prices were relatively stable under the gold standard. Your grandfather could tell you what a loaf of bread cost in his youth, and that price would not sound absurd to you. Compare that to today, where prices from just 10 years ago seem like a distant memory. Of course, it was not perfect. Economic growth could be constrained by the supply of gold. If the economy was growing faster than gold reserves, it created deflationary pressure. Governments could not easily fund massive projects like wars by simply printing money. They had to raise taxes or borrow, and both had limits. This limitation created a constant tension. Politicians and bankers wanted more flexibility, more control. They saw the gold standard not as a safeguard, but as a cage. They wanted the ability to respond to crises, to stimulate the economy, to fund their priorities without being handcuffed to metal sitting in a vault. And they were about to find a key. The creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 marked a turning point. Initially, it was sold to the public as a way to prevent financial panics and stabilize the banking system. The pitch was simple: too many banks were failing. Depositors were losing their savings. The system needed a lender of last resort, a central authority to smooth out the rough edges. But it also centralized control over the money supply in a way that had never existed before in America. While the United States was still technically on a form of the gold standard, the seeds of a new system were planted. The Federal Reserve now had the power to expand credit, to influence interest rates, and to inject liquidity into the banking system. The door was cracked open. Fast forward to the pressures of World War I and the Great Depression. Governments around the world needed to spend massively, far beyond what their gold reserves would allow. War is expensive. Rebuilding economies is expensive. Politicians needed money, and they needed it fast. One by one, they began to sever the link between their currencies and gold. Britain left the gold standard in 1931. The United States followed in 1933, at least domestically. Citizens could no longer redeem dollars for gold, though foreign governments still could. This was the first great monetary experiment of the modern age. Without the discipline of gold, without that physical constraint, the power to create money out of thin air was now in the hands of a small group of central bankers. The guardrails were officially off, and the car was picking up speed. This new era of unbound money truly came to a head after World War II. Under the Bretton Woods Agreement, signed in 1944, the United States dollar was crowned the world's reserve currency. still promising to be redeemable for gold by other countries' central banks at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. This was the compromise. The world would use dollars for international trade, and those dollars would be as good as gold. America was now at the center of the global financial system, and with that came both power and responsibility. But America's spending habits, fueled by the Vietnam War and massive social programs, started to raise eyebrows. The government was running deficits, printing dollars to cover the gap. Other nations, particularly France under Charles de Gaulle, began to doubt the United States could honor its promise. They started trading their dollars for gold, draining United States reserves at an alarming rate. The gold was flowing out of Fort Knox. President Nixon was cornered. He could either let the gold reserves run dry, or he could break the promise. In 1971, in what was supposed to be a temporary measure, he slammed the gold window shut, completely severing the dollar's last tie to gold. He went on television and told the world that the United States would no longer redeem dollars for gold. The world officially entered the age of fiat currency, money backed by nothing but government decree and public trust. This single act unleashed the full power of central banks and set the stage for the chaos of the 1970s. Welcome to the Great Inflation. With the dollar no longer anchored to gold, there was nothing to stop the Federal Reserve from printing money to finance government deficits, and print they did. The money supply exploded. Between 1970 and 1980, the money supply more than doubled. The result? A decade of runaway inflation. Prices for everything skyrocketed. The cost of living became a daily struggle for millions. Families watched their savings evaporate. Workers demanded higher wages just to keep up, which fed the cycle even more. It was a vicious spiral. The oil crisis of 1973 is often blamed, and it certainly made things worse. OPEC cut production, prices at the pump surged, and the economy went into shock. But the oil crisis was just the spark that lit a mountain of dry tinder. The tinder was the massive increase in the money supply orchestrated by the central bank. Too many dollars were chasing too few goods. It was a brutal lesson in basic economics. When you print more money without a corresponding increase in goods and services, the value of each dollar goes down. Your money becomes worth less. Inflation hit double digits. At its peak in 1980, inflation reached over 13%. Mortgages carried interest rates above 15%. It was crushing. It took the brutal interest rate hikes of Fed Chairman Paul Volcker in the early 80s, which caused a deep recession, to finally break the back of that inflation. Volcker jacked rates up to nearly 20%. He was willing to do whatever it took, even if it meant putting millions out of work. And it worked. Inflation came down. The crisis was solved, but the underlying system that caused it remained firmly in place. Central banks still had the power to print. The only difference was that they promised to be more careful next time. After the pain of the Volcker era, central banks seemed to have learned their lesson for a while. The 80s and 90s were a period of relative stability, often called the Great Moderation. Inflation stayed low. The economy grew. Markets were calm. Central bankers patted themselves on the back. They believed they had figured it out, that they could fine-tune the economy with precision. But beneath the surface, a new and perhaps more dangerous habit was forming. Instead of just printing money to finance governments, central banks started using their power to manage the economy itself. Whenever there was a hint of a slowdown or a stock market wobble, like the 1987 crash or the dot-com bust in 2000, the answer was always the same. Lower interest rates and inject more money. This became known as the Fed put. It was like an insurance policy for Wall Street. If markets started to fall, the Fed would step in and save the day. This trained investors to take bigger and bigger risks, knowing the central bank would always be there to bail them out. Why worry about a downturn when the Fed has your back? This policy did not cause runaway consumer price inflation like in the 70s, not right away. But it inflated massive bubbles in other areas, particularly in the housing market. With interest rates kept artificially low for years, people borrowed more and more. Home prices soared. Everyone assumed real estate could only go up. Banks handed out mortgages to anyone with a pulse. The entire financial system became overleveraged, built on a foundation of cheap credit provided by the central bank. It was a ticking time bomb. And then came 2008. The housing bubble, fueled by years of artificially low interest rates and lax regulation, burst in spectacular fashion. Lehman Brothers collapsed. Banks stopped lending. The global financial system froze. Credit markets seized up. The crisis was a direct consequence of the central bank's policy of propping up asset prices and keeping rates too low for too long. And their solution? The most extreme monetary experiment in history, quantitative easing or QE. The Federal Reserve and other central banks began buying trillions of dollars worth of government bonds and other assets, creating unimaginable sums of money from thin air. They called it liquidity injection. They told us it was a temporary emergency measure to save the economy from falling into another Great Depression. But temporary became permanent. For over a decade, QE and 0% interest rates became the new normal. The Fed bought bonds. The European Central Bank bought bonds. The Bank of Japan bought bonds. Central banks around the world were printing money on a scale never seen before. This did not just save the system, it supercharged it. Stock markets soared to record highs. Real estate boomed again. The wealthy got fantastically wealthier. If you owned assets, you won big. But for the average person, wages stagnated and the cost of living continued its slow, steady creep upwards. The benefits of all that money printing went to those who owned stocks and real estate, not to workers or savers. Inequality exploded. The can was kicked down the road, but it was getting bigger and heavier with every kick. The problem was not solved, it was just delayed. That brings us to today. After a decade of unprecedented money printing, the bill has finally come due. When the pandemic hit in 2020, governments and central banks opened the floodgates like never before. They injected trillions more into the economy through stimulus checks, business loans, and more key. The Fed alone printed over $4 trillion in less than 2 years. They told us it would not cause inflation. They told us this time was different, that the economy needed support, and that prices would stay stable. They were wrong. Dead wrong. The massive surge in the money supply, combined with supply chain disruptions, ignited the worst inflation in 40 years. Suddenly, the slow creep became a giant leap. Everything got more expensive, practically overnight. Gas, groceries, rent, cars, everything. Inflation hit levels not seen since the early 80s. People were shocked. Their paychecks were not keeping up. Savings were losing value in real time. And the central banks, the very institutions that created the conditions for this inflationary fire, are now posing as the firefighters. They are jacking up interest rates at the fastest pace in history, threatening to push the economy into a deep recession to clean up the mess they made. The Fed has raised rates more aggressively than at any point in decades. They are trying to cool demand to squeeze inflation out of the system. But this comes at a cost. Higher rates mean more expensive mortgages, more expensive business loans, and more economic pain. It is a cycle we have seen before. Create a bubble with cheap money, watch it pop, and then cause a painful bust to fix it. And who pays the price? Not the central bankers, not the politicians. It is regular people, workers, savers, families trying to get by. So from the gold standard to QE, the story is remarkably consistent. Every major inflationary episode and subsequent crisis has been preceded by a massive expansion of the money supply, orchestrated by central banks freed from the discipline of real assets like gold. They are the invisible hand that fuels the booms and engineers the busts. They operate under a veil of complexity, using jargon and technical language to obscure a simple truth. They have the power to print money, and they use it. They use it to fund government deficits, to prop up failing banks, to inflate asset prices, and to manage the economy according to their theories. This power distorts markets, creates inequality, and ultimately erodes the value of your savings and your wages. Understanding this history is the first step to protecting yourself. It is not about being a pessimist. It is about being a realist. The patterns are clear for anyone willing to look. When central banks print money on a massive scale, inflation follows. It might not happen immediately. It might show up in asset prices first, like stocks or real estate. But eventually, it hits consumer prices, and when it does, it hits hard. Knowing this gives you an edge. You can position yourself accordingly. You can protect your wealth. You can see the next crisis coming before most people even realize what is happening. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the hidden history of inflation. If this opened your eyes, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content that challenges the mainstream narrative. We are not here to repeat what you hear on cable news. We are here to dig deeper, to show you the patterns, to give you the tools to think critically about the financial system. What are your thoughts on the role of central banks? Do you think they are helping or hurting the economy? Let me know in the comments below. Stay informed, stay critical, and I will see you in the next video.